Harlem, 1946. They lynched Bumpy Johnson's nephew and pinned a KKK note to his chest. Police wrote suicide and closed the case. But Bumpy had 5 names and 7 days to keep a promise. What happened in those 7 days that terrified an entire organization into silence? To understand how it all led here, we go back to where it truly began. The rope creaked in the morning wind. Marcus Garvey Park, September 15th, 1946. 6:23 in the morning. An elderly woman walking her dog saw it first. A shape hanging from the old oak tree near the park's north entrance. At first she thought it was clothing, someone's laundry blown into the branches. Then she got closer. Then she started screaming. NYPD arrived at 6:47. Detective Robert Walsh was first to reach the tree. What he saw made him stop walking, made his breath catch, made him understand that this wasn't just a crime scene. This was a message. A young black man, maybe 19, maybe 20, hanging from a noose tied to a thick branch. His feet 3 feet off the ground, his head tilted at an angle that made it clear he died slowly, painfully. He wore a Columbia University sweatshirt, khaki pants, 1 shoe missing. His hands showed deep rope burns. He'd fought, struggled, tried to free himself. But 5 men had been stronger than 1 teenager. Pinned to his chest was a note, handwritten in crude block letters. "Coloreds know your place." Walsh looked around the park. Early Sunday morning. Nobody around. But this tree was visible from 3 different streets. Whoever did this wanted people to see, wanted the message to spread, wanted Harlem to know that even in New York City, even in 1946, the terror could reach them. This was a lynching. In Harlem. In the North. The boy's wallet was still in his pocket. Walsh pulled it out with shaking hands. Columbia University student ID, named Thomas Johnson. Walsh felt the blood drain from his face. Not Johnson. Please God, not that Johnson. His partner, Detective Sullivan, walked up beside him. "Who is he?" Walsh's voice was barely a whisper. "Thomas Johnson." "So we got an ID. We notify his uncle is Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson." The 2 detectives stood in silence, both understanding immediately what this meant, what was about to happen. Sullivan looked at the body, at the note, at the evidence of murder that was impossible to miss. "What do we write in the report?" Walsh stared at the ground for a long moment. He thought about his 20 years on the force, about the oath he'd taken, about justice and law and everything he was supposed to represent. Then he thought about the reality. 5 white men had lynched a black teenager, and even if Walsh arrested them, even if he somehow identified them and brought charges, no jury in 1946 would convict them. The system would fail, the way it always failed. "What's us? Suicide," Walsh said finally. "But a suicide." Walsh looked at his partner. His voice was harder now. "We write suicide. We file it. We notify the family. And then we stay out of whatever happens next. You think Bumpy Johnson will? I think those 5 men just signed their own death warrants. And I think the best thing we can do for everyone is look the other way." Sullivan was quiet, then nodded. "Suicide. Got it." They cut down Thomas Johnson's body, loaded it into the coroner's van, filed the paperwork, and waited for the storm they knew was coming. What they didn't know was that across Harlem, a phone was already ringing. And the most dangerous man in the borough was about to receive news that would change everything. Bumpy Johnson received the phone call at 7:12 in the morning. Illinois Gordon's voice was shaking. "Boss, it's Thomas, Ruth's boy. They found him in Marcus Garvey Park. He's gone." Bumpy didn't respond. Couldn't. The phone felt heavy in his hand. "Boss." "How?" "They're saying suicide. But boss, there was a note. KKK, course." Bumpy hung up without another word. He sat in his office for 10 minutes, completely still, his mind replaying every memory of Thomas, teaching him to play chess when he was 8, watching him graduate high school, driving him to Columbia on his first day, seeing the pride in Ruth's eyes as her son, the first in their family, walked onto that university campus. Thomas Johnson was 19 years old, first-year student at Columbia University, pre-law. He wanted to be a civil rights attorney, wanted to fight injustice in courtrooms instead of on streets. He was brilliant, quiet, wore thick-rimmed glasses, carried books everywhere. His professors said he had one of the sharpest legal minds they'd seen in years. Thomas lived with his mother, Ruth Johnson, Bumpy's older sister, in a modest apartment on 135th Street. Every Sunday morning at 6 o'clock, he'd walk through Marcus Garvey Park to get to Abyssinian Baptist Church. Same route, same time. Someone had been watching, planning, waiting. Finally, Bumpy stood, put on his coat. "I'm going to Ruth's." Ruth Johnson lived 4 blocks away. When Bumpy arrived, she was sitting on her couch, surrounded by neighbors trying to comfort her. But comfort doesn't work when your only child has been lynched. Ruth looked up when Bumpy entered. Her eyes were red, destroyed. "They took my baby." Bumpy sat next to her, took her hand. "I know. The police said suicide, said Thomas hung himself. My boy would never. It wasn't suicide." "Then what?" "It was murder. 5 men. KKK." Ruth's body shook with sobs. Bumpy held her, let her cry on his shoulder. And as he held his sister, he felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years of running Harlem's underworld. Helplessness. His nephew was dead, and no amount of power, money, or influence could bring him back. But there was something he could do. After Ruth finally cried herself out, Bumpy spoke quietly. "I'm going to handle this." "Handle what?" "The men who did this." Ruth looked at him. "Will it bring Thomas back?" "No." "Then what's the point?" "The point is justice. The point is making sure no other mother in Harlem has to bury her son because some men in hoods thought they could terrorize us." Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "Then do what you have to do. But Bumpy, make them understand. Make them feel what I'm feeling." "I will. I promise you, sister. They'll understand." The promise made Bumpy left to begin what the police wouldn't do, what the law couldn't do, an investigation that would end not in arrests but in blood. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Bumpy stood under the oak tree in Marcus Garvey Park. The police had removed Thomas's body, cut down the rope. But they'd missed things. Bumpy saw what they had missed. 5 cigarette butts on the ground, different brands, smoked hours before, left in a pile like men waiting. He collected them carefully. 5 different shoe prints in the dirt. He memorized the patterns. Work boots, factory workers probably. A button, torn off during the struggle. Dark blue, factory uniform style, and something else. A matchbook, half-burned, from Ali's Tavern on East 96th Street, outside Harlem. A white neighborhood. Bumpy took everything. Then he circled the park, looking for anyone who might have seen something. At the north entrance, he found him, Curtis, an elderly homeless man who slept on a bench most nights, the kind of person people looked through, invisible. Bumpy sat down next to him. "Curtis." Curtis tensed. "Mr. Johnson, I don't want no trouble." "You won't get trouble. You'll get money and protection. Just tell me what you saw this morning." Curtis glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. 5 white men. They came around 5:30 this morning, before sunrise. Sat by that tree, smoking, waiting. I heard them talking, laughing about teaching some uppity Columbia Negro a lesson. Did you hear names? Just one, the tall one with the dark hair. Others called him Danny. Danny what? Didn't catch a last name, but I heard where they were going after, Ali's Tavern. Said they always celebrated there after their work. Bumpy handed Curtis $200. You never saw anything. You weren't here. Understand. Curtis nodded. The money disappeared into his coat. He left the park quickly. Bumpy returned to his office, made a phone call. Joey O'Brien, a bartender who owed him favors. Ali's Tavern. There's a group that meets there, white men. Probably came in early this morning, celebrating. I need names. 3 hours later, Joey called back. Got them. 5 guys came in around 7:30 in the morning, drunk already. Loud, bragging about taking care of business in Harlem. Names Danny Morrison, Rick Sullivan, Lou Bennett, Frank Dorsey, and Charlie Ross. Bumpy wrote the names down carefully. They regulars. Yeah, come in every other Friday night, meet in the back room with about 10 other guys. Real secretive. My boss says there's some kind of club. What kind of club? Joey's voice dropped. The kind that wears hoods, if you know what I mean. Bumpy knew. Thanks, Joey. You've paid your debt. Within 12 hours of Thomas's murder, Bumpy had what the police never even looked for. Intelligence gathered through connections the law couldn't access. Information bought with favors and fear, and the reputation of a man who protected Harlem like it was his own family. By 8 o'clock that evening, Bumpy had complete files on all 5 men, where they lived, where they worked, their families, their routines, their weaknesses, everything. He called his 4 most trusted men to his office: Illinois Gordon, Willie Lee, James Quick Jackson, Marcus Cole, men who'd been with him through wars, through prison, through hell. They'd known Thomas, watched him grow up. This wasn't just business. This was family. 5 names, Bumpy said quietly. They lynched Thomas. Now they pay. He handed out folders. Each man took one, studied it. 7 days. 5 men. Each one understands what they took from my sister, what they took from Harlem. Illinois looked up. What's the approach? Individual justice, tailored to the crime. Bumpy stood, walked to the window. Danny Morrison, he pulled the rope. He hangs. Rick Sullivan, KKK, burns crosses to terrorize families. He burns. Lou Bennett, a hunter, loves the outdoors. He gets hunted. Frank Dorsey has a wife and 3 kids. Nice house, proud of what he built. He loses everything. Charlie Ross, the youngest, the weakest, he gets to choose. Betray his brothers or die with them. The 4 men nodded, understanding the poetry, the balance. And when this is over, Bumpy continued, we're burning down their whole operation. Every man in that KKK cell disappears. They think they can bring Southern terror to Harlem. We're going to teach them that Harlem doesn't scare. The plan was elegant in its brutality, precise in its vengeance, each punishment matching the crime, each lesson personalized. One more thing, Bumpy said. Document everything. Photographs, evidence. I want proof of what they did. So if anyone asks later, we can show them exactly why these men had to pay. The 4 men stood, ready, committed. But Bumpy wasn't finished. He had one more moment, one more piece that would turn this from revenge into legend. He opened 5 folders on his desk, spread them out like a dealer showing cards, each one containing detailed plans, photographs, schedules, vulnerabilities mapped with surgical precision. This isn't revenge, Bumpy said quietly. This is education. We're teaching them what happens when you touch Harlem's children. He picked up the photograph of Thomas, smiling in his Columbia sweatshirt, holding a law book. Thomas wanted to fight injustice in courtrooms, with laws and judges and justice. He believed in the system. Bumpy's voice hardened. But the law called his lynching a suicide. The police looked the other way. The system that should have protected him failed. He placed the photograph back on his desk. So we become what the law should have been. not criminals, protectors. And when this is over, when every man who touched Thomas has paid Harlem will be safe. Because they'll know. They'll all know. You don't touch Harlem's children and walk away. Bumpy looked at each of his 4 men, these brothers who'd never failed him. 7 days, 5 primary targets, 10 to 15 secondary targets. By the time we're done, there won't be a KKK cell left in Harlem. Not a man. Not a hood. Not a memory. He opened Danny Morrison's folder first. Danny, tomorrow night, midnight, his garage. 3 of you go in. Silent, professional, you know what to do. 4 times you lift him. 4 times you let him understand what's coming. On the 4th time, you don't bring him back down. Willie Quick and Marcus studied the folder, nodded. 2nd folder. Rick Sullivan. Rick, day 3. He'll be scared after Danny, but he'll still go to work. Still come home. Willie, you prepare his garage while he's gone. Gasoline, blocked exits. Then, you light it from outside. Let him understand what burning feels like. 3rd folder, Lou Bennett. Lou, days 4 through 6. Quick, Marcus, you follow him into the mountains. He'll run after hearing about Danny and Rick. You hunt him. Not to kill, to break. 3 days, footsteps behind him, voices in the dark. No physical harm, just fear until his mind shatters. 4th folder, Frank Dorsey. Frank, day 6, his house, his pride. Illinois, you burn it. Everything. Make sure his family's safe first. But everything he owns, gone, so he understands loss. 5th folder, Charlie Ross. Charlie, day 7, Illinois, you intercept him when he tries to run to the police. Give him a choice. Be our messenger or die. He goes back to that warehouse, tells his 15 KKK brothers what happened, gives them our ultimatum, disband or burn. They'll vote to stay, Illinois said. I'm counting on it, Bumpy said coldly. When they do, we end them, all of them. That warehouse becomes a tomb. The room was silent, the weight of what they were about to do settling over them. This isn't murder, Bumpy said. This is balance. They took a life. Lives get taken from them. They destroyed a future. Their futures get destroyed. That's not revenge. That's justice. He stood. The meeting was almost over. 7 days. 5 men. 15 accomplices. Not one of them walks away. After they left, Bumpy sat alone in his office. He pulled out a chess set, the one he'd taught Thomas to play with. Set up the board, moved a black knight forward. Checkmate's coming, nephew, he whispered. 7 days. They wanted to send a message. Now Harlem sends one back. He turned off the light. Locked the door. Tomorrow the war would begin. Tomorrow 5 men would start paying the price. And by the end of 7 days, the KKK would learn a lesson they'd never forget. Touch Harlem's children, and Harlem touches back. Not with laws, not with courts, with something older, something final. 7 days, Bumpy whispered to the darkness. Let's teach them what justice really means. But those were just the 5 executioners. The 5 men who'd held the rope. The 5 who'd laughed while Thomas died. What about the 10 men waiting in that warehouse, the ones who'd planned it, approved it, celebrated it? What choice would they make when Charlie Ross came to them with blood on his hands and terror in his eyes? Would they disband and run, or would they stay and fight? Bumpy already knew the answer. Some men were too proud to run, too convinced of their superiority to back down. And those men would burn. Danny Morrison worked at an auto repair shop in the Bronx, lived alone in a small house with a detached garage. Divorced 2 years ago. No kids. Simple man. Simple routines. For 48 hours, Willie Lee watched him. Danny left for work at 7 in the morning, returned at 6 in the evening, ate dinner, then spent his evenings in the garage working on his Chevy. Always the same pattern, always predictable. The garage was his sanctuary, his escape, the one place he felt in control. It would become his tomb. September 17th, 8 o'clock in the evening. Danny was in his garage, radio playing low, wrench in hand, working on his carburetor. He was humming along to the music, relaxed, confident, thinking about the $500 his group had promised him for the Thomas Johnson job. Thinking about what he'd buy with it. He didn't hear the side door open, the one he always left unlocked because this was a safe neighborhood, because nothing bad ever happened here. Not until a hand clamped over his mouth. Danny's eyes went wide. He tried to fight, tried to swing the wrench, but two more men appeared from the shadows. Strong hands grabbed his arms, twisted them behind his back. Professional, efficient, practiced. Within seconds, his hands were bound with rope, the same type of rope Danny had used 6 days ago in Marcus Garvey Park. Then Willie Lee threw another rope over the garage's ceiling beam, the thick wooden beam Danny had installed himself 2 years ago. Proud of his work, never imagining what it would be used for. Danny saw the noose, understood immediately. He tried to scream against the gag, shook his head violently. His eyes were pleading. Desperate. Willie's face was stone, no emotion, no mercy. You know what you did. You know why we're here. They put the noose around Danny's neck, tightened it, not too tight yet. Just enough for Danny to feel it, to understand what was coming. Then they lifted him. Slowly, deliberately. Danny's feet left the ground. The rope tightened around his throat. He kicked, gasped. His bound hands twisted behind his back, trying uselessly to free themselves. 30 seconds. That's how long they held him up. Long enough for Danny to feel the panic, the suffocation, the certainty of death approaching. Then they lowered him, let his feet touch the ground, let him breathe. Danny gasped, coughed, tears streaming down his face. He thought maybe they'd show mercy. Maybe this was just a warning. Maybe they'd let him go if he promised to leave town. They lifted him again. This time for 45 seconds. Longer. Worse. Danny's vision started going dark around the edges. His lungs burned. His heart hammered against his ribs like it wanted to escape. They lowered him again. Danny was sobbing now, broken, terrified. He'd never felt fear like this, never understood what true helplessness meant. They lifted him a third time, a full minute. Danny's body convulsed. His face turned purple. His eyes bulged. He was seconds from passing out when they lowered him again. Thomas Johnson, Willie said quietly. 19 years old. Columbia University. He felt this for 4 minutes. 4 minutes of knowing death was coming, of fighting and struggling and hoping someone would save him. Danny tried to speak through the gag, tried to say he was sorry, tried to beg for his life. Did he beg? Willie asked. Did Thomas beg you to stop? Did he cry? Did he tell you he had a mother who loved him, a future he wanted to live? Danny nodded frantically. Yes, yes, the boy had begged, had cried, had pleaded for mercy. And you laughed, Willie said. You pulled that rope and laughed. They lifted Danny a 4th time. This time they didn't lower him. Quick and Marcus held the rope steady while Willie set up a camera, took photographs, documentation, evidence that justice had been served, that Thomas Johnson had been avenged. Danny Morrison died the way Thomas Johnson died, slowly, painfully, alone in the dark with a rope around his neck. When it was over, Willie pinned a note to Danny's chest. 1 down, 4 to go. You knew your place. Now you're in it. Harlem remembers. Thomas Johnson. They left through the side door, disappeared into the Bronx night like ghosts. By the time Danny's ex-wife found him the next evening, she'd come to pick up some belongings she'd left behind. Harlem's message had already started spreading. The word moved through the city's underground like electricity. through the bars, through the shops, through the neighborhoods where people paid attention to things the police ignored. Danny Morrison was dead, hanged in his own garage, and there was a note, a message, a promise. Rick Sullivan heard about Danny at work. One of the guys on the factory floor had a cousin who knew Danny's ex-wife. The story came through twisted and exaggerated, but the core truth was there. Danny was dead, murdered. A note about Harlem and remembering. Rick went pale, left work early, told his boss he was sick. He drove home with his doors locked, checking his mirrors every few seconds, seeing threats in every car that followed him for more than 2 blocks. At home, he locked every door, every window, checked them twice, 3 times. His wife asked what was wrong. He told her nothing. Just feeling paranoid, just being careful. But careful wasn't enough. Not when Willie Lee had already been inside his house earlier that day, had already prepared everything while Rick was at work and his wife was shopping, and the house was empty. September 18th, 5:30 in the evening. Rick came home from work, checked all his locks again, felt slightly better, safer. His wife was making dinner, his kid was doing homework. Everything seemed normal. He went to the garage to fix his lawnmower, had been meaning to do it for weeks. Needed something to keep his hands busy. Something to distract his mind from the thoughts of Danny hanging in his garage. Rick didn't notice the faint smell of gasoline. Didn't notice that his emergency exit window had been nailed shut from the outside. Didn't notice the fresh scratches around his door lock where someone had picked it earlier. He worked for 20 minutes, adjusting the blade, changing the oil. His mind slowly calming. Maybe Danny's death was random. Maybe it had nothing to do with Thomas Johnson. Maybe it was a coincidence. Then he heard liquid spreading across the concrete floor behind him. Rick turned around, saw his gasoline can tipped over, spilling, creating a pool that spread toward him like a living thing. But he hadn't touched the can. It was on the other side of the garage, 10 feet away. Then he understood. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been in here, was maybe still in here. Rick ran for the door, grabbed the handle, pulled. Locked. From the outside. His heart stopped. He spun toward the window, ran to it, tried to lift it. Nailed shut. Couldn't budge. Panic rising. Throat closing. Hands shaking. Rick grabbed a wrench, started pounding on the door, screaming for his wife, for his kid, for anyone. That's when he saw it. Through the mail slot in the door. A small opening he'd installed for convenience, for getting mail without coming to the front. A lit match appeared in the slot. Rick's scream was cut short by the sound of his own voice saying, "No, God, please, no." The match fell into the gasoline. The garage exploded in flames, heat and light and smoke filling the space in seconds. Rick threw himself at the door. Once. Twice. The old wood creaked but held. Third time, the door splintered. Gave way. Rick fell through onto the driveway. His entire body was on fire. His clothes, his skin, his hair. He rolled on the ground, screaming, burning. Neighbors came running. Someone had a blanket, beat at the flames. Someone else called an ambulance. His wife ran out, saw her husband on fire, started screaming. Rick survived. Barely. 60% of his body was covered in third-degree burns. His face was melted, unrecognizable. The doctors said he'd need years of surgery, skin grafts, pain management. He'd never work again, never look the same, never live without constant agony. The fire department investigated, found accelerant, found the nailed window, found the manipulated lock, professional arson, attempted murder. Detective Walsh came to the hospital, looked at Rick's burned face, at the note the firefighters had found pinned to the mailbox, untouched by flames. 2 down, 3 to go. You burned crosses to terrorize families. Now you know how fire feels. Thomas felt this too. Walsh read the note. added it to his file, closed his notebook. "Can you identify who did this?" he asked Rick, a formality. They both knew the answer. Rick tried to shake his head. The movement sent waves of agony through his body. "Didn't see anyone," he whispered through cracked, burned lips. Walsh nodded. "Expected that. If you remember anything, let me know." But Rick wouldn't remember, wouldn't identify, wouldn't testify, because he understood now. Understood that the system wouldn't protect him, that Harlem was coming, that there was no escape. Only 3 more targets left, and one of them was already running for his life. Lou Bennett heard about Rick at a bar. A friend called him, told him Danny was dead and Rick was in the hospital, burned beyond recognition. Told him there were notes, messages. Someone was hunting them. Lou didn't finish his drink, didn't say goodbye. Just ran. He went home, threw clothes in a bag, told his wife he needed to get away for a few days. Go camping. Clear his head. She didn't argue. Could see the fear in his eyes. Lou drove 3 hours upstate, to the mountains he knew like his own backyard. To the wilderness where he'd hunted deer and bear and felt like a king, where he was predator, where he was in control. He parked at a remote trailhead, grabbed his pack, his rifle, started hiking deep into the woods, away from roads, away from people, away from whoever was hunting his friends. By nightfall, Lou was 5 miles in. He made camp, built a small fire, felt safer. Out here he was dangerous. Out here he was the hunter. He didn't know that Quick Jackson and Marcus Cole had been following him since he left the city. Didn't know they'd arrived at the trailhead 2 hours before him. Didn't know they were watching him right now from the darkness beyond his firelight. Lou ate, checked his rifle, laid out his sleeping bag. The woods were quiet, peaceful. He started to relax. Then he heard it. Footsteps, in the darkness, matching his earlier path, coming closer. Lou grabbed his rifle, pointed it at the darkness. "Who's there?" No answer, just footsteps, getting closer. "I'm armed, I'll shoot." The footsteps stopped. Silence. Lou waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, his heart hammering. Then the footsteps started again, from a different direction, circling him. Lou fired into the darkness. The gunshot echoed through the mountains. The footsteps stopped again, but only for a moment. Then they started again. From behind him now, Lou spun around, fired again, until his rifle was empty. The footsteps stopped. Lou reloaded with shaking hands, waited, listened. Nothing, just wind in the trees, just his own ragged breathing. He didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every sound was a threat. Every shadow was a man. By dawn, Lou looked like he'd aged 10 years. Day 2. Lou broke camp, started moving, faster, deeper, trying to lose whoever was following him, trying to find safety in the wilderness he knew so well. But the footsteps came back, always just out of sight, always matching his pace. When he walked fast, they walked fast. When he stopped, they stopped. Then the voice started. "Lou?" Distant, echoing, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Lou Bennett." He spun around, saw nothing, just trees, just shadows. "You helped kill Thomas Johnson." Lou ran, sprinted through the woods, off the trail, through brush and streams and over rocks, his pack bouncing, his lungs burning. The voice followed, always behind him, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, sometimes directly above him in the trees. "You can't run, Lou. We're always here, always watching, always following." Lou ran until he collapsed, gasping, crying. He pulled out his rifle, fired randomly into the woods, screaming, begging for them to show themselves, to fight him like men. But they never showed themselves. That was the point, the genius of it. No physical harm, no violence, just psychological warfare. Just fear, building on fear until the mind couldn't handle it anymore. Day 3. Lou was broken, He'd stopped running, stopped trying to escape, just wandered in circles, talking to himself, talking to Thomas Johnson's ghost, begging for forgiveness, promising he'd never do it again, promising anything for the voices to stop. Quick and Marcus took turns. One would make sounds while the other rested. They never let Lou sleep, never let him feel safe. Every time he closed his eyes, they'd call his name, make footsteps, break branches, keep him in a constant state of terror. By the third afternoon, Lou had lost track of time, of direction, of reality. He threw away his rifle. Didn't need it anymore. Couldn't fight ghosts. Couldn't fight his own mind. When the search party found him on September 22nd, his wife had called police. When he didn't return, he was wandering in circles, dehydrated, delirious, talking to people who weren't there. The doctors couldn't explain it. No injuries, no drugs in his system, no physical reason for the complete psychological collapse. Just a man whose mind had shattered, who'd been hunted until he broke, who'd learned what it felt like to be prey, to be helpless, to know death was coming but not know when or how. In his hand, when they found him, a note. 3 down, 2 to go. You hunted a boy like an animal. Now you know what it feels like to be prey. The woods remember. Detective Walsh read the report, added it to his file, noted the pattern. 3 men. All connected, all destroyed in different ways, all with notes referencing Thomas Johnson. His partner Sullivan came to him. We have to do something. This is vigilante justice. This is murder. Walsh looked at him. Danny Morrison was murder. This is consequences. But nothing. We called Thomas Johnson's lynching a suicide. We looked the other way. Now Harlem's handling it, and we're going to keep looking the other way. And when it's over, when all 5 are dead, then it's over, and Harlem's safe. And maybe the KKK learns that some places fight back. 2 men left, Frank Dorsey and Charlie Ross, both terrified, both knowing their turn was coming. Frank moved his family to a hotel, the Lexington on 48th Street, paid for a week, figured they'd be safer away from home, away from the pattern, away from wherever Harlem's hunters were looking. But Illinois Gordon had been watching Frank for 6 days, knew exactly where he'd moved, knew when the hotel room would be occupied, knew when the house would be empty. September 20th. 2 o'clock in the morning. Frank's house caught fire. The flames were visible from 3 blocks away. Orange light against the dark sky. Neighbors called the fire department within minutes. But by the time the trucks arrived, the house was fully engulfed. Gasoline had been poured around the foundation. Windows had been broken to feed oxygen to the fire. This was professional, methodical, designed for total destruction. Firefighters fought it for 2 hours, saved the houses on either side. But Frank's house, nothing left, just ash and blackened beams and melted memories. The fire chief found Frank at the hotel at dawn. Mr. Dorsey, I'm sorry. Your house is a total loss. Frank just nodded. He'd known it was coming, had been waiting for the call. And sir, this was arson. Professional arson, accelerant, multiple points of origin. Someone wanted to make sure nothing survived. Frank looked at the chief. My family? They weren't there, right? They're here with you. Yes. Then they're safe. But everything else? The chief shook his head. Everything else is gone. Frank didn't cry, didn't rage, just sat on the hotel bed and stared at the wall. His wife held their children, both of them crying, not understanding why their house was gone, why their toys and clothes and beds and everything they owned had disappeared in fire. Frank understood. This was the lesson. This was the price. Not his life, not his family's lives, but his future, his past, his legacy, everything he'd worked for, everything he'd built, gone. A firefighter brought him the mailbox, melted, blackened, but still readable. This was on it. Thought you should see. A note, written on fireproof paper, intentionally designed to survive. 4 down. 1 to go. You destroyed a family's future. Now you understand loss. 1 more left. Frank handed the note back. Said nothing. There was nothing to say. He'd burned Thomas Johnson's future. Now his own was ashes. 1 target left. Charlie Ross, 23 years old, married 6 months ago. The youngest of the 5. The one who'd hesitated when they put the noose around Thomas's neck. Who'd held the rope but whose hands were shaking. Charlie knew he was last. Knew that 4 of his friends were destroyed. Danny dead. Rick burned. Lou insane. Frank homeless. And he knew he was next. September 21st. 5:30 in the morning. Charlie made a decision. He'd go to the police. Confess everything. Go to prison. Anywhere was safer than the streets. Anywhere was better than waiting for Harlem to come for him. He got in his car, started driving to the 28th precinct, 3 blocks away. Just 3 blocks and he'd be safe. Protected. Away from whoever was hunting them. He didn't notice the car following him until it boxed him in on a quiet street. 2 blocks from the police station. So close to safety he could see the building. Illinois Gordon stepped out, walked to Charlie's window. Knocked. Charlie looked up. Saw Gordon's face. Understood immediately. Get out of the car, Charlie. Charlie's hands gripped the steering wheel. Please, I'm going to turn myself in. I'll confess. I'll tell them everything. Get out of the car. Charlie got out. His legs were shaking. His face was pale. He looked like he might pass out. You were going to run, Illinois said, like a coward. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to do it. Danny made us. He said we had to send a message. I didn't. Danny's dead. I know. So save your apologies. They don't bring Thomas back. They don't give Ruth her son. They don't mean anything. Charlie was crying now, tears streaming down his face. Please let me go. I'll leave New York. You'll never see me again. I'll disappear, I swear. Illinois pulled out a photograph. Thomas Johnson. Smiling, wearing his Columbia sweatshirt, looking young and hopeful and alive. His name was Thomas. He was 19 years old. He wanted to be a lawyer, a civil rights attorney. He wanted to fight for people like him, protect them. And you put a rope around his neck and pulled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring him back. But you can do something useful, something that might save your life. Charlie looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Anything. I'll do anything. You're going to the warehouse on 98th Street. You know the one, where your group meets every other Friday. Charlie nodded. He knew it. Tonight at 9 o'clock, all 15 of you are going to meet there, and you're going to vote, disband, and leave New York. Or stay and face what Danny, Rick, Lou, and Frank faced. They'll never leave. Some of them will want to fight. I know. And that's fine. Because if they vote to stay, we burn that warehouse down, with all of you inside. And the NYPD will call it an accident, just like they called Thomas's lynching a suicide. Illinois put the photograph back in his pocket. You have a choice, Charlie. Convince your people to disband. Or die with them. Those are your only options. And if I don't go, if I just keep driving to the police. Illinois smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Then you don't make it to the police. You disappear. Right here. Right now. And we still burn that warehouse. Your choice doesn't change what happens to the others. It only changes what happens to you. Charlie stood there for a long moment, processing, understanding. Then he nodded slowly. I'll go. I'll tell them. I'll try to convince them. Good. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. Illinois got back in his car, drove away, left Charlie standing on that street, 2 blocks from the police station he'd never reach, 2 blocks from a safety that didn't exist anymore. 9 o'clock that evening. The warehouse on East 98th Street. 15 men gathered. The full KKK cell that operated in secret in New York. Men with regular jobs, regular lives. Men who wore hoods at night and respectable faces during the day. Charlie told them everything. About Danny hanging in his garage. About Rick burning. About Lou going insane in the woods. About Frank's house reduced to ash. "And they gave us an ultimatum," Charlie said, his voice shaking, his face pale. "Disband tonight, leave New York, or they burn this warehouse down with us inside." Some men laughed, nervous laughter, uncertain laughter. One colored gangster threatening 15 of us. "He's bluffing. 5 of our men are destroyed in 6 days. Another man shouted, "Danny's dead, Rick's in the hospital, Lou's in a psych ward, Frank lost everything. How is that bluffing? So what we run, we let them win. We're the KKK, we don't back down from threats. They're not threatening, they're killing. There's a difference." The argument escalated. Voices rising. Some men wanted to leave immediately. Get out while they still could. Others wanted to stay and fight. Show Harlem that the KKK didn't scare. Finally, they voted. Hands raised, counted, recorded. 10 voted to stay. 5 voted to leave. The 5 who voted to leave, including Charlie, stood immediately, grabbed their coats, headed for the door. "You're making a mistake," Charlie said at the door, his voice desperate. "They're coming, tonight. They're really coming." "Let them come," one of the remaining men said, his voice hard, confident. "We'll be ready. We're armed. We're organized. 1 gangster and his boys against 10 of us. We'll handle it." Charlie shook his head, walked out, got in his car, drove straight to the bus station, bought a ticket to California, got on the next bus, didn't look back. Outside the warehouse, hidden in shadows across the street, Bumpy Johnson and his 4 men watched. They saw 15 men enter, saw 5 leave an hour later, counted carefully. 10 stayed, Illinois said quietly. Bumpy nodded. Then 10 burn. At 11:45, the attack began. Willie Lee and Quick Jackson moved to opposite sides of the warehouse. Each carried 3 Molotov cocktails, glass bottles filled with gasoline, rags stuffed in the necks. Simple, effective, devastating. Marcus Cole positioned himself at the back exit, the fire escape that led to the alley. Illinois took the front entrance, the main door. Bumpy stood across the street, watching, orchestrating, making sure everything went according to plan. At 11:47, the first Molotov went through a window, then another, then another. 6 bottles of gasoline and fire crashed into the warehouse. The building erupted in flames, orange light, black smoke, heat that could be felt from across the street. Men inside started screaming, running for exits. The front door was chained from outside. Illinois had locked it while they were arguing, while they were distracted, while they were so focused on their vote that they didn't notice someone securing their tomb. The back door opened. 3 men ran out, burned, screaming, terrified. Marcus Cole let them run. They'd learned their lesson. They'd carry the scars and the memory for the rest of their lives. That was enough. 7 men died in that fire, trapped inside, overcome by smoke before the flames reached them, burned beyond recognition by the time firefighters arrived. The fire department's official report: accidental fire. Likely cause improper storage of flammable materials. Possible illegal alcohol distillation. No evidence of foul play. The NYPD's investigation closed within 48 hours. No suspects, no charges. Detective Walsh added it to his file. Closed the folder. Never spoke of it again. By September 23rd, the KKK cell in Harlem was destroyed. 5 men had lynched Thomas Johnson, Danny Morrison dead, Rick Sullivan disfigured, Lou Bennett institutionalized, Frank Dorsey homeless. Charlie Ross fled to California. 10 more men had supported them. 7 dead in the warehouse, 3 escaped with severe burns and trauma. The remaining KKK members in New York, the ones who hadn't been at that warehouse, who hadn't participated, disbanded immediately, burned their robes, destroyed their records, disappeared into normal life. The message had been received, understood, internalized. Harlem protects its own. Touch Harlem's children, and the cost is everything. After that night, the KKK never operated in Harlem again. Not once. Not ever. The story spread through the underground, through the networks of organized crime and street justice that existed parallel to the law. Everyone knew. Everyone understood. You don't touch Harlem's children. You don't test Bumpy Johnson. You don't mistake mercy for weakness or law-abiding for defenseless. Because when the system fails, when the law looks the other way, when justice becomes a word without meaning, something older takes its place. Something that doesn't require courts or judges or juries. Something final. Over 3,000 people attended Thomas Johnson's funeral at Abyssinian Baptist Church. The casket was closed. Ruth had insisted. She wanted people to remember her son alive, smiling, full of promise, not the violence, not the hate. Just Thomas. Bumpy stood next to his sister throughout the service, silent. His face showed nothing, but his eyes carried weight that nobody else could see. As the casket was lowered into the ground, Bumpy placed something on top. 6 photographs, Thomas in his Columbia sweatshirt, smiling, and 5 others the mourners couldn't see. Danny hanging, Rick burning, Lou broken, Frank's ashes, the warehouse in flames. Underneath a note, Thomas, they paid, all of them. Harlem delivered justice. Rest easy. Your mother is safe. Your neighborhood is safe. Nobody will do this again. Uncle Bumpy. Ruth saw the photographs, put her hand on Bumpy's arm. Is it over? It's over. Did they understand? Did they feel what I felt? Every single one of them understands loss now. Ruth nodded, placed a flower on the casket. My baby wanted to be a lawyer, wanted to fight injustice in courtrooms, but the courtrooms failed him. I know. So you became his justice. Yes. Thank you. 17 years later, in 1963, a reporter asked Bumpy about that September, about the rumors, about 12 men who died or disappeared in 7 days. Bumpy was 61, still sharp, still dangerous, but tired. My nephew wanted to be a lawyer, wanted to fight injustice through the legal system. He believed in courtrooms, in judges, in the law. And I believed in the law too, until the law called my nephew's lynching a suicide, until the police did nothing, until the system failed him completely. So you took justice into your own hands. I didn't take anything. Justice was owed. The courts wouldn't deliver it, so it came from somewhere else. But doesn't that make you just as bad as who? Bumpy's voice was sharp. As the men who lynched a 19-year-old. As the police who covered it up. Don't compare me to them. He stood. The interview was ending. You want to know if I regret it? I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my nephew died believing the system would protect him. But the men who died, they got exactly what they gave. They took a life. Lives were taken. That's not revenge. That's balance. At the door, Bumpy stopped. After September 1946, the KKK never operated in Harlem again. Not once in 17 years. You know why? Because sometimes the only thing that stops terror is the certainty that terror will be answered. That's not me being a criminal. That's me being what the law should have been. The reporter never published the interview, but the story lived on. The KKK never returned to Harlem. Not in 1947. Not in 1960. Not ever. Everyone understood what happened when you touched Harlem's children. Everyone knew the cost. Thomas Johnson wanted to be a lawyer, wanted to change the world through courtrooms and constitutional arguments. But his uncle became his justice instead. Became what the law should have been but wasn't. 5 executioners, 10 accomplices, 12 men who learned the final lesson about consequences. Harlem protects its own, not with laws that fail, not with courts that look away, with something older, something the system doesn't want to acknowledge but can't prevent. With justice from the streets, from people who understand that sometimes when the law fails, protection must come from somewhere else. Rest in power, Thomas Johnson. 1927 to 1946. The lawyer Harlem never got. The brilliant mind that never argued its first case. But also the reason the KKK never came back. The spark that taught a lesson echoing for generations. Your death wasn't meaningless. It protected thousands who came after. It sent a message that lasted decades. Touch Harlem's children, and Harlem touches back. Not with patience, not with faith in broken systems, but with certainty. With consequences, with the promise that terror will be answered. That's your legacy. Not the law degree you never got, but the safety you bought, the protection your sacrifice created, the justice your uncle delivered when nobody else would. Rest in power. The fight you wanted in courtrooms was fought in streets instead, and it worked. God help us, it worked.